All right, welcome to Say Hello to the Bad Guy. I'm your host, Locke, and this is the podcast where we drink, smoke, and bullshit about the life of a historic criminal. Now we're talking outlaws and gangsters. We're not going to cover too many serial killers. That's just a little bit dark for me, and this ain't no true crime podcast. Honestly, you can't call this a history podcast because I'm no historian. I'm just a history fan that does some research and bullshits about it with his friends. So speaking of my friends, let me introduce you to my co-host. First with us today, we got J-Bone.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
And also with us today, we got Tone.
What up, dope?
Since you guys were trying to jump the gun, we'll get straight into these drinks. It is a whiskey. Tone, you said it tastes like a whiskey.
Yep.
I've never had a Japanese whiskey before.
I was just gonna say, why so pale?
But Suntory Whiskey Toki from the House of Suntory Whiskey, established 1923. Did you guys taste it though?
Yeah, it's got a nice, mellow, less charcoaly, earthy taste, but I like it. It's real good.
My thing was, I was real surprised for it being so light. Like,
I was gonna
thought
add,
it would
when
not
he
have a good
guessed
whiskey taste.
Right. before you told us what it was, I was thinking like, because you tasted it, I hadn't. Like, man, how do you get whiskey from that?
Yeah.
Like, there's the clear, there's aged in burnt barrel. I'm like, what?
That's why I was a little surprised. That's why I made that comment, because I'm like, this looks light, but it tastes like whiskey.
It's a blend of carefully selected Japanese whiskey, silky with a subtle sweet and spicy finish.
Sounds sexy.
Oh.
It looks a lot darker in the bottle.
It does. Well, it's in there with that giant ice cube.
Yeah.
So that probably
Add a little bit of water to
Well, when
it.
you put anything splashed over a Death Star, like it kind of lightens it up.
Well, we're usually drinking deep country bourbon, so you kind of need that ice cube to lighten that fucking, like you said, charcoal barreled dark shit to take a little bite off that. And this is already light, but I think it's still got the flavor. So. Not only have we tried, like I have here, every kind of whiskey. So Tennessee whiskey, Kentucky bourbon, Irish whiskey,
Goddamn
Canadian
peanut
whiskey.
butter whiskey,
Yeah.
fucking maple fucking sausage whiskey, fucking.
My fiance liked that peanut butter whiskey.
Did she?
Yeah, I ended up buying some.
I knew she
Yeah.
would. Yeah, it's a good drink. I've now tried most of those. So there's Screwball, there's Sheepdog, there's the Old Smokies. Is that the one you try?
I tried the Screwball.
Screwball.
Mhm.
That's probably the best of them. It's the most expensive too.
Yeah, it was pretty expensive. Bought the small bottle. I think it still was like $20 or some shit.
But yeah, so now we can add a Japanese whiskey to our arsenal.
Nice. I don't think I had any kind of drink from any from the Asian countries or anything.
You never
Like,
drank sake?
I never drank sake. I don't believe.
Oh man,
I
I
think I would have remembered that.
don't drink a lot of sake, but when I go to places that have it, when I do drink sake, I drink a lot.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a wine buzz is a little different.
Yeah.
Because it's a grape versus a mash or whatever. I feel like sake's kind of like that. Like it's a different type of buzz. It's more like I feel like you get more of a body buzz.
It's a shot type glass, but it's a real small glass. Sake's not in the bottles are pint size. You don't really, even your alcoholics, I guess, if you had a party store in Japan, you're not sitting out there pounding fifths of sake. Like it don't even come in those increments.
Oh,
It's not. It's a sipper. Like
Right.
It's good though. You get it hot, like a hot sake.
Hot sake?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is it smooth or what?
I mean,
What did it?
No,
what-
I
smooth,
read-
like Japanese whiskey. It's got a liquor taste. It's a specific taste, but it's kind of good. I think it's better when it's hot.
Really?
It's kind of like a tea liquor thing.
Yeah, like a hot toddy.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
but a hot
but
sake.
all by itself
Just
without.
straight sake.
Yeah.
You have to.
I mean, they have different kinds because it's kind of like wine. So they're like, if you go, there'd be like a sake selection. There's not just one.
So what do they warm it up on the grill for you, like in a teapot or something?
No, they bring it to the table in it. So I think they heat it up on the back because I don't think you could just. It's like comes in like some special
It's a glass bottle.
sake tea
sake.
server.
Well, I just need to get to a Japanese restaurant, I guess.
Well, see, I was at my local massage parlor and I asked for a hot sake.
The one over
And
there.
then,
on,
yep.
on
They fucking threw me in the back of a cop car.
They got you too.
Before we get started, we got to make sure we thank Sixfold Sueno for letting us use his music in the intro, and then Cancer for letting us use his song in the mid-roll. We're using his new song, Kings and Cannibals, so check that out. You can follow both on Instagram. If you can't find our links, you can go to our website, badguypodcast.com, and you can click straight to the links through there. You can also go follow us at Bad Guy Podcast on Instagram and Bad Guy Podcast on TikTok. We're on Twitter too at the Bad Guy Pod, but we don't tweet much. We got some followers, but I don't know. Tweet us, and then we have to tweet you back. Make us use it, and we will.
If you tweet me, then I'll tweet you back.
That's that fucking Digital Underground jam, right?
Yep.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. And the bad guy we're covering today is Ken Eto.
This ain't negotiation time. This is Scarface, final scene, fucking bazookas under each arm. Say hello to my little friend.
Eto. Okay.
Yeah.
ETO.
Ken Eto.
Okay. Now I see what's going on.
Tokyo
here.
Joe. See?
So we got Ken Eto, a.k.a. Tokyo Joe. So that's why we bust out the Japanese whiskey for our first Japanese bad guy. Ken Eto was born in California on October 19th, 1919. I seen that he was from Stockton, but I know he grew up in a farm too. But I guess I don't know the California landscape that much. So when I think of Stockton, I think of the Diaz brothers, in the Stockton slap. So I didn't know if that used to be farm territory, but it said he was from Stockton, California. His dad was a devout Christian and a strict disciplinarian. That's actually how he got here. Like, he came here visiting, because there was a lot of migrants coming over at the time. And he came over and found Jesus and figured he needed to help these Japanese heathens immigrate into America. So he decided to stay here and raise his family here.
I'm sorry. What? My drunk ass forgot the timeline.
19.
He was born 1919.
Sorry. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So his dad's a devout Christian, strict disciplinarian. He'd use beatings in extreme situations. He'd burn his children for discipline.
You got to burn them young so they know you love them.
Right.
So Ken Eto's brother remembers his mom's always being depressed, usually not getting out of bed, and he never remembers hearing her speak.
When he was older, he found out she was dead in the bed.
She's just depressed. Shut up.
He never got out of bed, never spoke, she turned dusty. Oh yeah, she was a mummy.
Eventually, her husband sent her back to Japan, where she spent her final years in a mental health facility. So as a kid, Tokyo Joe liked to fight. He had a reputation as a tough kid, and at the age of 14, he ran away from home. He would travel for work following groups of Japanese immigrants. So he'd live like a hobo life. He'd hop the trains, follow the rails, and there's just these groups of migrant Japanese workers working their way up the West Coast. So he'd follow those groups, and he'd get jobs at either picking, fruit picking and picking vegetables. Or then as he got further up north, they would work, there was a lot of cannery jobs. So he just kind of worked his way up and down the coast, hopping rails. While living on his own, he learned he had a photographic memory. He was great with numbers, and he had great situational observation skills. For years, he would continue to work to make the connections and meet people, but he made most of his money gambling on the side.
That was a
And
smart
gambling,
hustler, man. That's how you do that shit.
I have this high stakes, no limit game of Go
Right.
going on later. If you want to come
Right.
throw
For
down.
sure.
I guess I'm not doing nothing.
Well, hey, we all got paid today, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll go jump the rail
Then
up
I'll
to...
be heading up to San Francisco.
On Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, which led to America joining World War II. But so with Pearl Harbor, we know Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And
Internment camps over here.
yeah, so America declares war against Japan, and America put up internment camps across America, where they would hold Japanese American citizens. Eto was interned at Minidoka War Relocation Center in Idaho. It's now a historic site, but it was a huge internment camp for the Japanese at the time.
Nothing says temporary prisoner house hey, that's not even got a foundation. It's just on pegs.
Right.
You know what? It's getting torn down anyway.
With nothing else to do, Ken Eto would spend all of his time... I keep reverting between names. I'll just call him Tokyo Joe. So at this point, he wasn't Tokyo Joe. He was just Ken Eto. But
All this gambling, I think he's the Japanese Amarillo Slim.
In 1942, he was arrested for the first time for violating a camp wartime curfew. After the war ended, he stayed in the area until 1949, where he moved to Chicago. But that's when he kind of becomes known as Tokyo Joe. So Tokyo Joe shows up, and he starts off in gambling dens, and he rapidly he starts cleaning house. He eventually starts making so much money, he gets approached by the outfit, because those are the guys running all the big time games. And basically it got to a point where he was making so much money gambling that they just deemed it a racket. And in order for him to keep gambling in their dens, they would have to get a cut of all of his winnings. So eventually he gets to a point where he's making so much money and he spends so much time with these guys. They say, well, you know what? Instead of just gambling all the time, if you're so good at this, you should run a gambling operation. So he starts working as kind of a gambling book. Now, he first tried to work on the numbers game in the black neighborhoods of Chicago, which at one point we covered was ran by Ted Rowe. He had a hard time getting the numbers racket in the black neighborhood because at the time there was the P-Stones. They kind of took over that neighborhood. So he ended up working as a go-between the Italians and the Puerto Ricans, where he ran a game which was called Bolita, which is the numbers game, but it was a Puerto Rican version.
Boricua.
His organizational skills helped him develop a booming operation, and he worked as an associate for the Chicago outfit for decades. At his peak, he was bringing in $200K a week, most of which would be paid out in payoffs, bribes, and kick-ups. He would take home about $25,000 a week.
Nice.
Not bad.
So that comes out to $1.3 million a year.
In them times, not now.
Yeah, that's like in this is like late 70s.
Yeah.
1.3 million. That was
That's
a time.
$5 million.
That was a time when you were like being a millionaire meant something. Like if
Yeah.
you're a millionaire now, you're like upper middle class almost.
There's some punk kid in your mom's basement who's good at online poker.
So
Fuck
you
yourself.
said this is the 1970s?
Yeah. So yeah,
The later
So
70s.
late
He-
70s.
So he's pretty old now.
Yeah.
He was born in 21, so he's 50.
No, he's born in
something.
1919. So yeah.
Yeah.
He's 56,
He's in his 50s.
57.
Okay, yeah, he's all right.
Oh yeah, and I guess I did miss when he first moved to Chicago. He had a thing for the ladies. He married a stripper.
Nice.
Soon after coming to Chicago.
I am rough with a stripper. It's just a sake talking. Did I mention hot sake?
But yeah, so he had a thing for ladies. He had a lot of money. He married a stripper, had a couple kids. He ended up divorcing her and marrying another lady. So
Another stripper.
I don't know if the other lady was a stripper, but he was that guy.
He left Sapphire and went to Diamond.
I would have.
Yeah.
Hey, you're just a rich guy making the rounds in Chicago, connected guy. Hey, forget about it.
Forget him.
He'd end up eventually having 6 kids. What we're gonna do? We're gonna go ahead and take a quick smoke break, refill our drinks, and we'll be back in a minute.
Dear mama, these amateur cannibals crave power. Grave robbers, murder for favor from fake fathers. Disorder in the chapel with shackles to break out of. They cower, solo but mob 'em and they crowd us. Spilling in the street with heat like hot lava. Pop bottles, molotovs tossed and rocks follow. Ominous disciples like vipers, they strike quickly. Come at me like an army, I'm tearing you down with me. Spit like a baron, rulers of bread like Kaiser. Roll with the goal and get beaten like outsiders. These amateur animals swing in the wrong jungle. Climbing the wrong vines mean these lions will snuff you. Concrete wilderness building our own structures. Writing our own order, appointing our own judges. Overthrowing authority, morally lack conscience. Fighting for survival with rivals with throat punches. Dear mama, these amateur cannibals crave saviors. Poor savages ravage for animal bits. They just monitor the area carrying curved swords. Slither in the brush till we crush them with brute force. Men storming the harbor with armored attack armaments. Calling all guards to swarm them and skin their faces for ornaments. Order more troops to corner them, Agent Orange and order them. Kill them all, just destroy them and let your guy get to sorting them. Code of honor corroded as soon as it was awarded. Celebrations were thwarted before they could be supported. Rolling thunder bombarded them, flaming dart put a part in them. Separate and disarm them and send the bulls to the parliament. Operation Niagara, Viet Cong on the battle with landmines and grenades and flamethrowers to scatter them. Dear mama, this battle is harder than what we thought it'd be. Every part of me scarred, I'll be recognized when they mortar me. It's almost time Time to run, put on your army helmets now. You're running toward the sun with all your guns, defenses down. Flashes everywhere, the lights create an atmosphere. Water in your lungs, you pray for death, but life is here. You're about to die, face it, you're about to die. Zero sand in your glass, fuck it, you can't even cry. Put a dagger to your neck, just to keep yourself in check. Put a dagger to your neck, just to keep yourself in check. Everybody grab a side as you fight to stay alive. Dancing on a hand grenade so you can die and they survive. Silver bullets in the sky, dropping 7-second death. Scattering the children, run, rub until there's nothing left. Ashes in the water, sons and daughters holding flags up high. Wallow in the harbor as the military tanks arrive. Penetrate the border with disorder like an animal. Every war has the honor of turning kings into cannibals. Cannibal kids wanna be king. 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 Cannibal kids wanna be king.
We're back. So when we left off, he had put himself in a position as a high-ranking associate over decades, running gambling operations in Chicago. He was labeled as a high-ranking associate and a good earner, but he was able to mostly operate under the radar. Now, in the early 80s, a rookie federal agent named Elaine Smith was made one of the only female agents to cover OC in Chicago.
Oh, damn. The female Elliot Ness?
So she comes over to organized crime, and at first they have her checking like wiretaps and, just doing all the shit work. It was kind of, I guess, just after Hoover had passed, and they said, okay, we're going to let ladies in, They're like, okay, but we're not going to like it,
Right.
So she
You
starts...
brought some laundry for me to do?
So she gets in. She's one of the first females in the FBI, but definitely one of the first working organized crime in Chicago. She's from the Chicago area. She really wanted the gig. So she was assigned to cover Ken Eto, which was like this guy ain't even Italian. It's like a slap in the face. It's like a go away job. The file, there was nothing in it. So it was kind of like just busy work. Like, okay, here you go. You made it. Here's Ken Eto. Go cover this guy.
Right.
So she decided to diligently work the case. And then she just dug into like all the tedious stuff, which is like case files, working CIs, working wiretaps, so just listening to everything all the time. And she starts covering Ken Eto, who's some guy that nobody ever covered because he's Japanese in Chicago, so it didn't make sense. And it turned out he was tied in with all of the top guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so she starts tailing this dude, and turns out he's like this gangster. Like he's this feared guy. He's a good earner. So due to her work, eventually she turns a CI. They come up with an operation, and they bust one of his stash houses. And they catch him with a ton of money. And they busted him for interstate gambling because most of his stuff was coming out of Gary, Indiana. Once you cross the state line with your crime, it becomes federal.
Yeah.
Which is always a no-no.
It was a huge thing, too. There was probably 4 places in 1982-ish, like Atlantic City, down in Mississippi, out in Vegas, like everywhere else was frowned upon.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal back then and them times, like interstate gambling.
So they get a big bust on him, and she tries to flip him. And he refused to flip, and he said back in Japan he came from a family of samurais, which believed in the Bushido Code, and that...
Death before dishonor.
Yeah, that he took an oath, and he wasn't going to flip.
Right.
And then he looked at the case, and he said, honestly, I'm not even going to fight the case. It looks like I'll do 18 months. I can do 18 months on my head. So I'm not going to flip. I'm not even going to fight the case. Whatever. You got me. So the capo he reported to was a guy named Vincent Solano, who was skeptical that he wouldn't flip. Most people reached out, and they said, yeah, he said he's just going to do the time. He's not even going to fight in court. He's just going to plead guilty, do the time. And that made him not trust it. Because he said, well, why would he plead guilty? Why wouldn't he at least fight it or something? That doesn't make sense. He's probably going to flip.
Because I'm no 6'9", bitch.
So Vincent Solano was skeptical, and on February 10th, 1983, Tokyo Joe was invited to dinner to discuss the situation. As a gambler, he actually said, in hindsight, they did the math, thought there was about a 90% chance he was going to get killed, which left to about 10% chance of coming out of it alive. So before he left, he took a bath, he put on his best suit, and he left his life insurance information for his wife. So he goes out, he sits in his car, and he sat in his car for like a half hour. Like, fuck, they're probably going to kill me. Should I fucking go?
You have to go.
So he goes and picks up 2 outfit soldiers, Jasper Campese and John Gattuso. He's driving the car. So one gets in the front seat, one gets in the back seat. They're giving the directions to a restaurant he's never been to. And he said he actually said the one guy, he said when he seen Gattuso's hand was shaking, he knew, all right, they're about to fucking kill me. And they turn into an alley, and they tell him to park in the alley. And the second he parked in the alley, they shot him in the head. And as soon as he got shot in the head, he's like, I knew it. And then they shot him in the head again. And he's like, what the fuck? Why am I not dead? And then they shot him in the head again. And he was like, well, fuck. I'm going to play dead. Or they're going to keep shooting me. So he just starts flopping. And he flops on the floor of the car and plays dead. And they both get out of the car and they bounce. So he waits until he hears him run. And he gets out of the car. And he's all fucked up. He's bleeding everywhere from his head. He's not dead. And he runs down the street. And he goes to like a local pharmacy. And tells them to call 911. And they're like, I don't know. But eventually he gets an ambulance there. They take him to the hospital, and he got shot in the head 3 times. Most of the bullets hit his skull and wrapped around his head. Now, what I thought it was attributed to when I first read it is that I heard Frank Collada, who was a mob guy, he passed away recently. He's doing tours in Vegas. He was with Tony Spilotro. He's one of the technical advisors on Casino or whatever. But he talked about a lot of Chicago guys were reloading their old bullets and thinking that if they used 22 with less gunpowder, it would make less noise and it would work like a silencer. And they just weren't having enough power to kill people. So I assume that's what it was. Official police documents said it was just like really old bullets, so they weren't stored properly. Either way, they shot him in the head 3 times and didn't kill him.
That's crazy.
So they get him to the hospital and they can't believe he got like a real bad concussion. He couldn't hear right. Like he was all fucked up because he was shot in the head. But the police bring him in and they're like, well, hey, I mean, you said you didn't want to flip. They shot you in the head. Now we can leave, but you're going to be sitting here shot in the head and they just come back and kill you.
They'll bring a better gun this time.
So he tells the cops, he says, I don't want to talk to anybody but Elaine Smith. They call Elaine Smith, who she was on vacation when they called her. And they brought her in. And he said, look, I didn't want to flip, but they're going to kill me. There's nothing I can do. Like, if I go to jail, they're going to kill me. If I go back out on the street, they're going to kill me. So, I mean, how does this work? He turned state's evidence, in between all the work that she had did, like digging through all the old files and him having a photographic memory, they filled up like 12 notebooks full of notes that he gave up. Among the information that Joe gave were the names of both of the shooters. Both of the guys, Jasper Campese and John Gattuso, were arrested. And they both made bail. It was like $1.5 million a piece. They tried to flip them. And they're like, hey, you blew the hit. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to get killed. You should just flip. And they were like, no, we're fine. It's not a big deal. On July 14th, 1983, the bodies of Jasper Campese and John Gattuso were found garroted in the trunk of a car in the Chicago suburb of Naperville.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what did you say? Found rotted?
Garroted. That's the piano wire from
Yeah,
behind
yeah.
strangulation and shit.
Okay.
Hello, Carlo.
So his testimony led to the conviction of 15 outfit mobsters and their associates, and that included corrupt police officers. Tokyo Joe testified in outfit trials for years afterwards. The failed assassination of Tokyo Joe is considered the death blow to the Chicago outfit as we knew it.
The golden age,
yeah.
from Capone all the way up till 82, 83.
So from Tokyo Joe, huh?
Yeah. Ken Eto died in Georgia in 2004 at the age of 84. He was living under the name Joe Tanaka. Elaine Smith wrote a book called A Gun in My Gucci, which is like a real good resource if you wanted more information. And she also worked on a documentary named Tokyo Joe, The Extraordinary Life of Ken Eto. So those are both like real good resources on Ken Eto. But I got to do an interview with Elaine Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do that after this episode's over. I don't know. I'm either going to put it after this or release them both at the same time.
Okay.
But after the episode's over, we have an interview with Elaine Smith. It's a good interview, except for the part where I'm learning how to interview. So somebody's publicist sent an email to the wrong guy. Like, hey, I heard you got a podcast or something. You want to interview her?
That's funny. After she got off the Zoom call with you, she's like, amateur.
At one point, she said, that's a good question. Nobody ever asked me that question before. I'm like, fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah, it is.
Bad guy podcast, motherfucker. Yeah. We ask good questions.
We ask all kinds of good questions.
We ask the hard-hitting questions over here.
I'm not a historian, but I'm smart as fuck.
And I read all this shit. Well, honestly, what kind of really led to it is the fact that the both of them were kind of they're both kind of outsiders on what they did. So they're like, whatever, go do something and go
Right,
away.
right.
And then they were like, well, you're not even Italian, you're Japanese. Go work with the Puerto Ricans.
Right, they gave
You know?
her a case that no one was like even thinking about even solving, you know.
Right.
Like we barely had any kind of information on you. You're not gonna solve this. You're a woman.
You're a woman.
Yeah.
And I like my coffee black.
Yeah.
And what's fucked up is that's not the 50s. That was like 1980.
But those cops then were the guys that were kids in the 50s that are like, it wouldn't hurt you to run a vacuum across his hair. Huh?
All right, so that's the story of Tokyo Joe.
So say good night to the bad guy. Go on. The last time you're gonna see a bad guy like this again, let me tell you.
So you guys haven't seen a picture, but if we were gonna cast a movie about Tokyo Joe, who would you cast to play him?
I'm going to say minus the martial arts prowess, like a Jet Li type.
Yeah, these are hard for me because I only know a
handful,
handful of Asian actors.
Right, you gotta start
and I don't want
thinking-
to be all like, oh, Jackie Chan.
Well, here you go. Here's some pictures of Tokyo Joe.
He is kind of a Jet Li. Or a Jackie Chan.
He really looks like a shitty Jackie Chan. In
Yeah,
that
because,
picture.
most of his story was probably, I think we narrowed it down to he was about 50 or some shit like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you would bring in some younger guy to play him
Yeah.
for like, a chunk of the backstory or whatever, but the most of the story of him is going to be an older dude.
Right. Definitely, that middle picture, Jackie Chan for sure.
Yeah.
All right, here's a bunch of pictures of him shot up. So now we got to do the DEFCON scale. So standard DEFCON scale is 5 to 1, 5 being the lowest, 1 being the highest. On the Bad Guy podcast, there's no good guys. So 5 would be Lee Murray, who is your coke dealing bank robber. And then at 1, you'd have the Purple Gang, who's got multiple gang wars, multiple massacres, and they're killing people on the street. So on a scale of Lee Murray to the Purple Gang, where would you rate Ken Eto?
I'm putting Tokyo Joe at a 2.
I gotta say 3. Like, he was rubbing shoulders enough to have a lot of dirt under his name, but the intellect qualities, not just the photographic memory, but the organizational skills, doing what he did in the outfit for decades. And then, now they did cap him in the head 3 times, it didn't work, but he died at 84.
I mean, he knew a lot about, the syndicate that he brought down.
He did, but if he got in like with a company and like he knew nothing about the auto industry, like I could see him applying the person he was inside, just being successful at whatever he did. He just went from the farmland
Right.
Then he ended up Chicago and went in Rome. So he got mixed up in the crime and all that, but nothing pure evil.
I definitely put him towards the middle because I think like he accomplished a lot as a gangster, but I don't think he had a violent streak. Like I think he was violent enough to be able to get his way on the street. Like
Okay.
he wasn't a punk, but I don't think he was a violent guy like that. I think he was a good dude that used what he had to get by in a shit situation. I mean, 14 hopping trains to get a job picking fruit or something is a shit gig. You know what I
Right.
mean? And he worked his way up to banging strippers from
Right.
that. I mean, so I've kind of put him middle of the pack. He's a gangster by technicality.
Yeah, I
by
can
the
see
fact
Yeah.
by the fact that his job is a bad guy job. Probably ran a rock solid Bolita operation. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
bet that shit was smooth. Like people loved him.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
like he's probably running the fuck out of that numbers game and shit. Like the one way that I think that like he's impressive is the numbers. When they say he's making between 150 and 200 a week and he's bringing home 25, that's not a guy that fucking eats alone. He's distributing the wealth and shit. All right, so we're gonna call him a DEFCON 3.
Zach, this is Crystal Palace. Sync NORAD has declared DEFCON 3. Scramble all alert aircraft. I repeat, scramble all alert aircraft.
Before we go, you guys got anything?
No.
Just thanks for listening.
Let's hope we don't